I'm now excited to introduce our two esteemed governors, and it's been great working with both of these governors. The joy of being a chair of the Education Commission of the States is that you get a 2-year term, but we find a way to make it draw out for almost 4 years with everything that we do. And so I can't thank Governor Bullock enough for what he's done in timeliness, and for Governor Bryant, who's been with us through a lot of this past year. But Governor Bullock actually started out when he took over his chair 2 years ago, really focused on college and career readiness. And really wanted to see what could be done nationally around some of these issues. I know that in the last 2 years under his leadership, we've specifically issued reports that are focused on this around dual enrollment model policy components. When you're looking at dual enrollment, what are the 12 key model policies that need to be considered? We've done major papers on advanced placement model policy components and on early college high school model policy components to help policymakers know what other states are doing and what's working to make a difference. So I want to start off by asking first Governor Bullock and then Governor Bryant to give kind of your big picture idea about what career readiness really means and how does this play into the post-secondary side.
Thanks, Jeremy, and thank all of you for putting up with a couple of us for at least an hour or so. Look, I'm a product of our public education system in Montana. My kids literally go to the same schools that my wife Lisa and I did. And I fundamentally think that education in our public system is our great equalizer. It gives every single person that opportunity to succeed. But I also think that we need to make sure that we are continuing to innovate and address the needs that are there. And at times it's about cultural shifts. At times it's about saying that in addition to that quality education, in addition to the soft skills, are we making sure that we're providing the pipeline down the road for employers? And does that begin long before a kid even thinks about what his job might be? I'll use Montana as an example. I mean, on the one hand, some pretty incredible things happening right now. Unemployment rate well below 4%. More people are working in the state of Montana than ever before in our state's history. Named the #1 place in the nation for entrepreneurial activity 4 years in a row. February this year, fastest job growth in the nation. If you haven't noticed, part of a governor's DNA is you have to brag about your state a little bit. But really what all that adds to is that while some incredible things are happening, if I can't meet the needs of the employers long term, all of that's going to be for naught. I know that I'm going to have 130,000 Montanans retiring over the next decade. How am I going to fill those jobs? And I'm a state of 1 million people over 147,000 square miles. So it really is by necessity. It's not just the importance of education, but it's looking at how we're making sure to continue to build and sustain and fuel growth, that we're providing the employers what they need as well. Often that takes then building career pathways. Again, not waiting until they're done with high school or done with college. It takes making sure that recognizing that not every student has to go to college. And even students, as we look at the 2-year systems, it's not always about a degree. Maybe it's that professionally recognized credential that's going to set that young man or young woman on a right path. We know that businesses will be looking for employees, and I can't wait 2 or 4 or 6 years. I have to be working on that today. So we're really strengthening, I'll get into some of this, strengthening pathways for students, even while they're still in high school, to explore careers through work-based learning, to get a head start on one of those certificates, or dual enrollment, which we've done a lot of great work on from my perspective in Montana. But we also know that it can't just be the governors or the educators. Education, both K-12 and post-secondary, needs to be listening to employers as well about what they need and what it means from their perspective to be career ready. Employers, by the same token, need to recognize that they have a role in this. They have a role in investing in workforce development and training. And that's beyond their traditional roles. And parents and students really need to have an open mind, saying, what are the opportunities going in the future? And it may look some different for some kids than what the quote-unquote American dream is. But if we have those open minds open-minded parents, open-minded children, open-minded educators, and engaged business community. Together then, with our policymakers, we can make sure that we're creating the pipelines and making sure that we have our kids that are college and career ready.
Thank you, Governor. Governor Bryant, how about your perspective from Mississippi?
You know, one of the things that we try to look at, Governor Bullock summed it up, but when do we start with this idea of workforce and career readiness? Well, I'd like to believe it's as early as possible. Now, I have grandchildren. I'll show you photographs later, whether you want to see them or not. But my daughter had this daycare that she was trying to get her first child in, our first grandson, and she was so worried about it because it was the best one. Any of you ever heard of that concept? I mean, you have to get in line, you have to apply, they have to do a background check, I don't know, maybe a credit reference. It wasn't that bad. But she was so concerned about that, as we were, because it has a learning component within that daycare system, which, oh, by the way, we're replicating across the state of Mississippi. We found out that most of our children during the day are in some type of daycare center. And so if we're going to try to begin the early childhood education, which is something that I'm passionate about, we have to go where the children are at. We worried for years and struggled and said, how do we get all these children into some public education building? How do you put 4-year-olds on school buses and all the things that was struggling? And finally we said, why don't we teach those employees that are working there how to have added value in the educational component to those children. So we talked to our community college. We found some TANF money. I'm going to tell you this. I thought about not sharing it because I wanted to be the only one, but that's not, Chairman, I've been told I have to share these good things. But TANF will help you pay for the training of that workforce employee in that daycare center. So she or he is getting workforce training, and it doesn't have to be college algebra. I mean, we want to teach them the alphabet and their numbers and language, words, more words for them, some art component if we can, so that we have now found through our database research system that we are using that those children are more prepared to go into kindergarten than ever before. And we can show you that they do better than the children at home. The few that are left at home are doing better. Head Start's not doing so well. Some of you may have great Head Starts. We're going to work to make sure that ours are better. But that's where you start. And then it goes to this radical idea that we had, and prepare yourself for this. We said we don't think you ought to be socially promoted to the 4th grade unless you can read on the 3rd grade level. I know that's cutting edge stuff, but it is work. Now we put reading coaches. We spend about $35 million a year to hire reading coaches, a lot retired reading teachers or good teachers, and we put them into those schools to help the teachers teach the students how to read. Phenomenal success. When I came into office, 48% of the 3rd graders were reading at proficiency. 48%. We realize that 3rd grade is the line of demarcation. You've heard the stories. You know it. You learn to read by the 3rd grade, and you then, of course, value from that as you go on to use your reading to learn. And so we had to get these children to learn to read at the 3rd grade level. And when you say they won't be socially promoted, let me tell you, you get principals' attention. You get superintendent's attention. They came running to my office and said, oh my goodness, what are we going to do about the lunch schedule? 3rd graders eat at a different time than 4th graders, and you're going to really mess this up. You don't know how important it is for us to forget about all of those other things that may be interfering with teaching 3rd graders to read, because if they can't read at the 3rd grade, you socially promote them. They start having trouble in the 5th and 6th grade. They're failing math and science in 7th and 8th, and they're dropping out at 9th. So that's where we started our workforce training program. Now the continuum of that goes on every day. Every day we're discovering new opportunities. Dual enrollment. Everyone has that. If you don't get it, it is amazing to be able to have a child who is at risk. I've been chairman of Jobs for American Graduates for 3 years now. That's a lifetime commitment if you don't know it. So 3 years ago, we started looking at Mississippi about how we can intervene with these children at risk. Now that we are doing so with jobs for Mississippi graduates, about 95%. I know we heard today that our new numbers came out, about 95% of those children are graduating from high school. And then, of course, it's on to one of our community colleges in many of their opportunities to learn that workforce training that has become a center point of our community college. Wallet Hub, who I don't always agree with, said Mississippi has the best community colleges in America. I agreed with them on that. I'm all in on that. But our community colleges are doing a phenomenal job at workforce training. And then we connected to businesses. When you're in South Mississippi, you're probably going to look at something like aerospace because of Stennis Space Center. You may be interested in building ships because we build 70% of the Navy's warships at Pascagoula, Mississippi. 7,000 shipbuilders work there. So if you're going to do a workforce training program in South Mississippi and Jackson County, what would you want to train them to do? Yeah, build ships. And oh, by the way, they love it. It is the most exciting thing in the world for me to be able to go to that shipyard and see those workers, see some of those children that I may have met when I was handing out those certificates for them to be nationally board certified or certified marine electricians, certified marine welders, certified marine carpenters, many of which were young ladies that walked across in 6-inch heels. Marine welders. So then we look at also our universities. What are we doing there to make sure that you graduate with a 4-year degree and you can find a job? Now, I get in trouble when I say this, so I'm going to be as abstract as I possibly can. If you go to one of our universities and you spend 2 or 4 years and you come out with a degree in early Greek literature, you're probably going to have trouble finding a job in Mississippi. There's just not a lot of jobs available for people who master in early Greek literature. I love Greek literature. No, I really
That was
don't.
my major.
I'm sorry. I was thinking about either that or criminal justice. I was torn. I ended up being a deputy sheriff. But we have to think about that as well. What are we teaching at our universities? Do we want a student to come out in debt with all of that loan and being unable to find a job? One of the fastest growing populations we have now in our community colleges are those with bachelor's degrees that are coming back to learn a skill that they can now go and use to find a really good job. Those middle skills we all hear about. So it continues every day. There's not one place, including in my world. I get workforce training every day. I've had a lot of it in the past day and a half just here. I've learned a lot just talking to you. That's workforce training. Thank you. And I didn't have to pay $30,000 for that one. But the continuum of workforce training that we are seeing is so exciting every day. Last thing I'll say is ask your employers in your state, the people who provide the jobs, what they want. You know what they want? They think they would like for you to come out and have some expertise in problem solving. Anybody do problem solving? They'd like for you to be able to do group work. Can you work with a group? I have to work with a group all the time called the Mississippi Legislature. That's a challenge, boys and girls. Governor Bullock, that's a challenge. And then communication skills. The thing that excites me more about Jack than almost anything is see one of our students that was at risk, that every teacher said he'll never make it. She's going to drop out of school, and they get up and give a public speech to thousands of people at our annual meeting in Washington, D.C. This is remarkable, exciting, heroic opportunities for these students, and those are some of the things that we're focusing on in Mississippi.
So, governors, both of you talked about the relationship with employers. And I think we hear a lot in the media about employers saying they're not getting the qualified candidates that they need for the jobs that they're ready to hire for. And there's a lot of questions about what are the remediation options for some of those students. So what have you done in engaging on college and career-ready programs with the employer community in your states?
Yeah, well, I took office in January of 2013, and shortly afterwards, after taking office, I formed what was called the Main Street Montana program. If a business was looking at expanding or relocating to my state, what they'd say is, what are your strengths? What are your weaknesses? Where are the challenges? They'd actually put together a business plan. State of Montana had never done that. But I wanted that driven by the private sector. So we actually got, by the end of this, about 200 businesses doing this work. Not just regionally, we went industry by industry. We call them the key industry networks. 200 CEOs, and in every one of those industry sectors, what they said is the most important thing is workforce development. The most important thing for their success for the business, it's not our tax rate. We're the 6th best tax climate for business in the state, in the country. It's not about anything. It is actually about making sure that they have those workers. So first, by engaging them, I also got, in some ways, 200 new advocates to work with me in workforce development, in working with not just our colleges, but also our high schools. We still have silos, though. They didn't know what all we were doing, and they also didn't know the ways to engage with the overall education system and our State Department of Labor. One area that we've really seen the possibilities of growth for is apprentices. Apprenticeships, you think about it as just a welder. Over 1,000 different apprenticeable fields. Phlebotomists, IT folks. In our university system, at times our high schools with pre-apprenticeship programs and the employer all have a stake in that. And we know not only that, those young men and women that get into apprenticeship programs, they're earning money while they're learning the skill or the trade that that employer needs. We also needed to look at what we're doing as state government. I think it's first by Montana standards, we hired someone that is both employed by my State Department of Labor and by higher education. Because if higher education and the Department of Labor, the business side, isn't actually working together and saying, what is it that the business community needs out of our educational community? And how do we build those bridges? And we'd really be missing something. We've gone to higher education and saying at times, I never want to lose an employer that would be in Montana, but for the fact that they're saying that we can't find a talented, trained workforce. So fundamentally changing things and trying to address, and often that's in the 2-year system, how do you make that a little bit quicker to address the curriculum needs? Doing pilot programs across the board when it comes to, healthcare is going to be one of our fastest growing industries. So stood up 14 different apprenticeship programs just in the healthcare field alone. But we have to be looking at, and I was joking about the early Greek education. But yeah, I was liberal arts major. It taught me how to think. It gave me a lot of the skills and things that I need. But we also have to make sure that we're not only meeting our students where they are and providing them something relevant and that can give them a good job in the future. But in doing that, then we're working with the employers to say, what is it that you're going to need? And you can't be looking at, this is tomorrow. They need them tomorrow. So we need to be going consistently and recognizing that we're also going to have a continuing changing economy, working with the private sector to say, what is it that we can help provide and facilitate to make sure you have what you need?
If you've got a state chamber of commerce, ours is called the Mississippi Economic Council, go to them now and ask for money. And tell them you want to begin a Tech Master program. That's what we call ours. You can call yours whatever you want to do. You can put your state's name on it if you want to. But the program goes into high schools and, again, finds those challenging children that are in there, and we began to give them dual enrollment opportunities. So we take them to one of the community colleges, and we allow them to either get their GED or finish their Carnegie units at the same time they are learning a trade. It may be welding, it may be nursing, it may be a variety of things, but our State Chamber of Commerce not only helps us with that, but we also looked at the amount of demand on our unemployment payments, because unemployment in Mississippi's dropped to its lowest point in history ever before. It's about 4.9%. It was like 9.6% when I came into office. So we realized that those dollars that we do not have to spend now paying unemployment is available for only one of two things. You can rebate it back to the community. You can say companies that are paying those insurance premiums, we can give it back to you. Our state chamber said, we don't want it. What we want you to do is spend it on workforce training. So we took $50 million out of our reserve that was not necessary, that allowed us to continue to meet our federal requirement for the standard of money that should be in there, but we had $50 million extra, and now we're using it to fund these remedial training programs within our community colleges, and we designed them with an industry that is expanding or coming to Mississippi. I got Continental Tire. I have Continental Tire coming to Mississippi. They're going to build the largest plant in Continental's universe, 2,500 jobs. I've got to train a lot of people to go to work in a tire plant. Now, if you get in a classroom with juniors and say, how many of you want to go make tires, very few hands are going to go up. But you see, it's different than it used to be. It's automation, it's computerized, robotics. It is a young man standing at a terminal where he is putting in information that will then describe what type of tire is going to be made. You never touch it. They don't know that, so we have to go in and educate them with that. And then I can say, oh, by the way, it'll take you 2 years to get that degree, and I'm going to pay for it. And while you're here, we're going to make sure that you finish your high school degree as well. Another program called My Best. It's our community colleges. We use that $50 million just like we do for the targeted industry. You go into school, dual enrollment. What we found out is students, if you said you're going to have to go back to summer school and you can't graduate unless you can achieve this level, it really caused them to leave. They didn't want to do that. But if you say you can go to college, you're going to be in a college setting, a community college setting, it seemed to be less difficult for them to be a college student and to reach that level of obtaining an equivalency degree than it did to go back to summer school or repeat the 11th grade again. This is working beautifully for us. And finally, I will tell you, we have a program called Complete to Compete. We've got over 200,000 people in the state of Mississippi, 60,000 of which are eligible for an associate's degree today without doing anything else. They started in college, life changed their plans, and so maybe they left college, but they have enough of those degree hours to get an associate's degree. We're contacting each one of them. We're pulling them to their local community colleges, and they're walking across the stage. This is really good stuff. And it can be done in every state out there for very little cost and make a dramatic change in the number of people graduating from your universities and community colleges.
Governor Bullock, talk a little bit about the cost of college and post-secondary education. And this is a tough issue for a lot of families that are getting ready for that enjoyment. How do you work with policymakers to try to make the most out of that investment with your state universities, but also with dual enrollment programs and transition programs that you have?
Yeah, we've been fortunate for the last number of years at actually frozen college tuition in the state of Montana and keeping it much more affordable. This last legislative session, legislature made some cuts to my higher education budget, so I'll need both a combination of cuts and tuition increases to balance the budget. But what that also has done is really made affordability at the top of the mind for so many families in Montana and indeed policymakers as well. And I think that we need to, I mentioned at the start, a little bit of a cultural shift. We need to be thinking about what we want out of higher education. And it's interesting because in some respects, in many states, including my own, we didn't do enough analysis even up front of let's actually analyze where the needs are and what the wages are for folks coming out. So educating your consumer to say, well, if I choose to be an early Greek specialist, there may not be that much there. But if I choose to be a registered nurse, I know a registered nurse in Montana makes $58,000 on average a year starting, and we also know that there's a significant need for that. I think we also have to address the challenges with, as I mentioned, into apprenticeships and other programs that are different. Our two-year colleges aren't just saying even you need an associate's degree. We're going to the point of saying, well, maybe what you need is to provide that student, that earner and learner, an industry-recognized credential that then they can apply at the workplace and others. And that's a shift of mind, saying it ain't just about a degree. It's about giving whatever the skills are that's needed. We start this earlier and earlier. I could take you to Polson, Montana, which is a small community, and they have a critical access hospital there. They're working with the high school after the kids sign these HIPAA violations and the like, and they're rotating these kids throughout, I think it's a year-long program, a class. Well, they're often at the hospital, from the ER to maternity to business and finance. You're getting the kids engaged in a way that might say, I thought I wanted to be in the medical practice, but now I'm pretty sure I don't. But they may also be then saying, now I want to become an accountant because I worked on that side of it. Dual enrollment for me, and that's why that was my initiative, is I think significant. It's significant not just for, well, it definitely holds down costs. I can point to about $5 million of savings for Montana families on tuition on that alone. But it also engages our kids, not just the highest of learners. That kid that was never told he or she was college material, if takes that first college class in the comfort and the confines of their high school, their mind will open up in different ways. And we've said, I asked for 5,000 students, first of all. That was my goal. I want 5,000 of our kids taking a college class while in high school. Then I've said, I want 1,000 more a year, and I was just told we hit 1,073. So I set my goal a little too low on that. But what that affords, so that's, and I know for some of you, 5,000 isn't much. That's 25% of my kids in 11 and 12. They're getting a jump on the cost of higher education in ways that are a lot less expensive. And also we know if we follow these kids through, and not just the highest achievers, even the middling ones, are much more likely to actually be succeeding while in college, much more likely to get a degree faster. So trying to engage in different ways, but all of us have to shift our heads a little bit in as much as how we can meet the students where they are, how we can get them more excited in pre-apprenticeship programs, sort of learning academies early on, how we can recognize that not everybody has to get a post-secondary degree, and how we can make sure that those students that are going into post-secondary, we're providing the information for them and their families to know what the career or the job market needs are and what kind of money somebody can make if they take that investment in higher education.
Governor Bryant, probably last question to you, just, what does it mean from a policymaker's perspective on career ready versus college ready? And are they the same kind of thing that you can test for, or how do you look at that in your state?
I think you have to do both. Who would want to give one up for the other? When I was in college, I certainly anticipated getting a job. I had a wife and a job waiting on me when I got out of college. But if we use college or career readiness, I think we ought to use college and career readiness. Because I've got to get you in one of our community colleges, and I'm a product of community college. I'm the first in my family ever graduate from high school, ever graduate from college, ever be governor, ever teach. But I think we've got to do both, and we've got to design those systems of community colleges and IHL that will produce our institutions of higher learning, that will be producing that workforce that we have to have. We have 100 aerospace industries in the state of Mississippi. If I have to have a very high quality of student that's coming out of particularly our engineering schools to be able to go and help SpaceX test those propulsion engines, and Airjet Rocketdyne and Rolls-Royce are going to put man on Mars one day. And so we've got to look at both of those. Will they be students that will come out of high school and want to get a job? I sure hope so. And we ought to make sure that they feel valued. Now, the one component they will have to have if they come out of high school and are work ready is a really good teacher. Thank you. Thank y'all. And I say y'all, because if they've got a really good teacher, if they've got a really good school, if they've got a curriculum that can challenge them, and they come out and say, my dad runs an electrician, he's an electrician, has a company where he does that, I want to go to work for him, Dad's been training me since I was 13, I'm out of high school, I'm going to go do it. Great. Have you ever hired an electrician lately? They do okay. Not as good as plumbers, but they do okay. So I think we've got to work at all of the possibilities. And I think we are trying to advertise that we've got really good universities. If you fly Delta, and of course you ought to, you'll see the Delta magazine. Pay no attention to the comedian on the front of it. Turn back to the Mississippi section. And you will see not only my friend B.B. King, but you will see here where we are advertising our universities. And so we want those parents to look and go, oh, I need to send my child to the University of Mississippi or Mississippi State or wherever, because Mississippi's higher education system supports an engaged in skill-driven workforce. And we're advertising that. There's lots of things we could advertise in Mississippi, but one of the things that I want everybody to pick this magazine up and read is that we are driving for a skilled workforce at our universities and colleges.
Please join me in thanking these two amazing leaders on their great investment